Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of my Changing Beliefs, Changing Lives, Life After 50 conversations with other people on Substack. I'm getting to know many wonderful people doing wonderful things this way, and I'm loving these conversations and interactions. And for those who don't know me, my Substack is Changing Lives. I started it in 2022 and have recently switched away from doing long form written posts to mostly doing video posts, sometimes audio. Uh, again, because I just love the interactive nature of these things. And I write about mental and spiritual health and the ways my own mental health and spiritual beliefs are intertwined and have changed and all that good stuff. And I will let Shelley introduce herself and her Substack.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm so thrilled to have a conversation with you. And I believe there's a lot of interesting intersectionalities of our topics that we write about. I have the Substack Spicy Soul Mama. I've been there. It's my 2-year anniversary on Substack this week. And before that, I was on Medium since 2017. So I've been writing for a long time, and I was really thrilled to come over to Substack and the top because of this, just like simply this right now, like it's so great. The two-way street and the interactions and the kindness and the discovery of just some amazing writers. I write about motherhood, parenting, mental health, and spirituality. So those are kind of the intersections that I write about, and I'm working on a book, and I'm also and with my friend, the voice of I am. That's Christine. She's joined us. Hi, Christine. So she Yeah, so I'm working on a book about the same topics, and so yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So it's great to be with you, Wendy.
Great. And thank you for being willing to be one of my guests. These conversations like I said, have been wonderful for me, and I always leave energized and thinking, gosh, we could have talked for at least another hour. We have so much in common, and even on first meeting, it's amazing to see the commonalities, as you said. First question really is, how is your life different now? Than it was when you were younger, before you were 50, say?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, like, when I was younger, I remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait until I get into my 40s because people will be mature and treat each other so much better." And then I got to my 40s and I was like, "No, that's not the case." Like, I just really thought when I was young that people would grow up and be nicer. And hi, my friend Karen's here too. And so yeah, and so then when I started getting to these different ages, I was dismayed. And so now, but I do really do feel that something happens magically when you turn 50, and things just it is the wisdom it really it does enter into the wisdom years. I just care about less. I take things less personally. I'm more myself and than I ever have been. Even though like myself has always been there, there's just so many barriers to allowing, it seems, even though maybe they're constructs in our minds, but it seems as though we have to play these roles. We lean into these roles that we have to play in, whether like it's working or the spouse or and we don't have. I don't think we're taught how to communicate our needs.
And
And
more than that, I would say we're taught that our needs don't matter, or at least not as much as society's needs or whoever's
yes.
needs, especially for women, but really for anyone. As you said, every single guest I have had this conversation with so far has said something similar, and it's been true for me as well, that when we're younger, we cared so much more about fitting in, about conforming so that we will be accepted, so that we can be employed, um, all these things. And then when we reach 50 or whatever age it may be for different people, um, we just realize, you know what? I'm no longer willing to stay in that box other people have put me in and I've allowed myself to be in and thought I should be in. I'm ready to fully be who I am. And if other people reject that or don't approve of my choices or whatever, so be it. Uh,
Perfect. Yeah. The need to be liked starts to go away. And because we had, when I was working so for much of my life, I was working in Silicon Valley and, they kept on wanting me to be in this, box and play this game. And whenever so I was a corporate recruiter. And and this is a story that I've been letting go of for a long time because it really was, it felt, it if it just kept on making me not be who I was because I kept on getting laid off and they had nothing and they say, "Oh, it's not personal and has nothing to do with you." But when it comes down to it, I think that I didn't, I played the game to a point. And then when it was time, when a company acquired another company and there were redundancies, I was always part of the group. I mean, to be let go. And so I kept on getting and now I look at it, I'm like, "Okay, redirection, redirection, redirection." And now I'm like, "Okay, I've been redirected. I'm done with that." So, yeah. So it's hard to frame things, it's harder to take things less personal when we're younger, and we can take them less personally as we get older.
I think so too. Um, Although I will say it is an ongoing struggle for me in terms of comparing myself to others, and Substack reinforces that in so many ways. Like, people who just joined a few months ago and already have thousands of subscribers and viral notes or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Um, and also, it's a struggle for me financially because I do have such high ethical standards that I'm not willing to use the emotionally manipulative techniques and the like basically what a lot of corporate advertisers do that I don't like, that I see all the time on ads. I just like that may well be the most effective method, but it's not one that aligns with my values that I'm willing to do.
Mhm.
And also, I just want to help everyone, and so it's really hard for me to even be okay with charging money, but yet if I'm homeless and starving to death, I can't help anyone, right? So
Right, right. Yeah, no, you bring up some really important topics around the validation piece and other people, getting the viral notes and the thousands of subscribers. And I definitely emotionally find myself in those feelings as well. However, I keep coming back to there's enough room for everybody, and everybody can succeed, and everybody's pace is different, and we are here. I just watched recently, there's this young author, she's probably in her 30s and she is amazing. Her name is Amy McNee, and The World Needs Your Art. And she is so inspiring about how right now we need everyone to be creators because it's fueled by realness and authenticity and love. And that is what's going to save everything. And, spiritually, we are going through this real intense time, I think, as a collective. And so I think that the world needs our art and our creativity more than ever now.
yes, I totally agree, and I also think that we need it to sustain ourselves mentally and spiritually because the
Yes.
the world is so overwhelming right now, and there's such a constant onslaught of, you know, bad news basically and disturbing events, um, especially for those of us who are sensitive, who are empathic, who are intuitive. It's just overwhelming, at least for me and for the people that I've spoken with about it. And it's more important than ever for us to say spend time in nature and to create and to view art too. I went
Hmm.
out the other day to an art festival and just walked around and looked at street murals and stuff too, and that is also very nourishing as is reading poetry or novels or whatever else, you know?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and it's so easy to
Mm.
get caught on that back on that treadmill, even though I'm self-employed, of like being the one
Right.
to push myself going, you can't go take time off and play because you need to do XYZ, right?
Yeah, I have a hard time too. Like I'm in my office and my husband's always like, all you do is sit in that chair. You're just always in that room, in that chair. Come hang out with me. So yeah, it's new for me too, like having that structure and that entrepreneurial
Mhm.
like mindset to be an artist and to also we are deserving of money, and and I look at it as an exchange, like an energy exchange. Like, okay, I'm putting out we just by putting out words, you're bringing value, and the right people, and we have to ask, and it's hard to ask. Like,
Mhm.
okay, if you like what you're reading, please consider upgrading to because it's like I know that everybody's tapped, but if you look at it, I always frame it as like it's the price of a cup of coffee per month, like 1 cup of coffee per month. That's it. That's all I'm asking. Like, I'm not asking for a
Yeah.
lot. And then I really wanted to say something about art because going to a museum, one of the best things that my favorite things about going to a museum is not only noticing the art, but noticing the people who are viewing the art because they're usually very diverse people from all different walks of life and backgrounds and ethnicities. And it is one of the only places where we're coming together to look at something at like a shared experience. And art makes us question and ponder. And I love talking to strangers at museums because I want to know what they're thinking. And the more curious we can be, the more curious we can be, the more heart based we can be.
Yes. And my collective transcendent spiritual experience is at Bruce Springsteen concerts.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so
And
great.
it's just incredible. And in fact, I'm reading the book Chatter right now by
Mhm.
Ethan Knox or Knoll. Anyway, it was a best-selling mental health book about the chatter in our heads, our self-talk.
Mm. Hmm.
And I get to this page and he talks about the awe we feel in nature and the importance of that, transcendence to realize, to gain a broader perspective and realize not be all have everything be about ourselves and our problems. But
Yes.
anyway, he goes on to say that, awe isn't limited to time in nature. Some people experience it at Bruce Springsteen concerts.
Right.
Some people experience it in art museums and et cetera, et cetera. Um, but yeah, it is a transcendent experience. And like you said, there are so few places now where people of all ages, all ethnicities, all sexual orientations, gender identities, the works, we come together and those
Mhm.
differences don't matter. And we have wonderful conversations and are curious about each other. um, I was sharing last time about the Zoom spiritual support group that I led. That was a 6-week group, and one of the participants wrote a testimonial and said it was life changing.
Oh.
And in fact, all I limited it to 12 people, and it was live only to make it
Mhm.
safe to share. And the things that people shared were mind blowing. And by the end of the 6 weeks, they all said, "Can we pay more to keep meeting because I've shared things here I've never shared with anyone else, and I don't have other safe people to talk about this stuff with
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of their spiritual practices, not being quote unquote acceptable in some circles,
Mm.
or whatever it may be, some aspect of who they are and how they live that others had judged or condemned. Suddenly they were in a space where others were saying, "Yeah, I've had a similar experience," or "That's really interesting. I'm curious to know more about that," instead
Mm.
of, "This is bad, you're wrong. This is what you
Right.
should be believing and doing."
Right. Oh, I mean, it sounds like you're a wonderful facilitator and congratulations on, having that response. And what a beautiful, like, act of service for you to hold that space for people to feel so comfortable to be able to share that. Yeah, I would love to learn more about that.
Sure.
How do you, what's the framework of that?
So like I said, it's a 6-week group. and each week is a different topic. So, like one week, the first week is, just getting to know each other, sharing our histories and what brought us together to want to be in the group. Then one week is spiritual places. One week is spiritual people who our role models are, living or dead, whether we ever knew them or not, and why. Um, one week is spiritual objects. So for some people, that's tarot cards, a photograph of a loved one, the gamut. And so it's just fascinating. The spiritual objects one, especially, was kind of a show and tell for those objects that were portable that we could hold up to the Zoom screen and talk about. So
Yeah.
that was probably the most fun one for me, at least. Um, but really, just the human connection and realizing that underneath our very diverse beliefs, practices, experiences, there's this core need to be understood and accepted for who we are. And
Yes.
so like I said, it was incredibly powerful. And I basically created the group that I knew I needed and figured, okay, if
Mhm.
I need this, a lot of other people probably do too.
That's
Um,
great.
and so that was the first group. And then I was going to run one that would have started on Sunday, but those dates and times just didn't work for people, or I didn't do enough to get the word out. So that one didn't actually start. So I'm going to try another evening one, because the first one was
Mhm.
evenings, and that seems to work better for people.
Mhm.
And then I'm also going to make my Substack into a membership with book clubs that are both mental health books and spiritual books. Like I'm definitely going to do one for Glennon Doyle's new book. Um,
Mhm.
and Again, I just want to be more interactive and conversational.
Mm.
And writing can be a one-way street, even though I get
Yeah,
great comments back. People resonate with my words. It's not the same as live interactions in real time, and
I
seeing each
agree.
other's faces too.
Yeah, I agree. I teach in person. I teach mindfulness in person at a local resort like where I live, and I'm meeting people once. Like, so they're coming to visit and stay at this like hot springs, and I guide them in meditation. And I get I am somebody that needs to be in community and needs to interact with people. Like, I get a charge out of it. It really fills me up. And um but I like it to be a safe space, of course. And I realized that I really love facilitating and helping people feel comfortable as well. And the problem with doing that there at the resort is that I only meet them once. And so while they're getting my Substacks, I don't really know them.
Mhm.
And so I've created a couple of online space communities as well that, like you said, like you needed it, so you built it. And what I needed and what I built is a like more of a spiritual parenting group that blends like parents that have neurodivergent kids that are young adults. Because what I found was there are mostly there's so much out there for young parents and for young children, but there's not a whole lot out there for, like people that have, children in their like late teens, early 20s, even 30s. And so I created every Friday a space at 4 p.m. Pacific where my subscribers can come, and I lead us in a guided meditation. My practices are mostly Buddhist based. And and then I really just try to feel into what the group needs. I've led a lot of parent support groups for mental illness for parents that have children with mental illness, like myself. And so I use a lot of different divinity tools like cards as well, like Oracle and Tarot and Angel decks, and also journaling and
Yeah.
sharing. So, like, I just love to go into the group and lead a guided meditation that really connects us to our higher self, with our child's higher self, and in a divinity like a bubble of light, so that we can be better parents, because we can only change ourselves. And that's in every situation, not just our parents, but like
Right.
we have to be the change that we wish to
Mhm.
see in the world. So that's really the basis for everything that I do. I even in my mug, like with my tea, it has a message, be the change. And I'm reminded every day. So
Yeah, that's wonderful. And yeah, like you said, the spiritual piece is so often, like, there's a focus on mental health, but the spiritual piece is often left out. And I admit, when I started my Substack, I was like adamant that it's going to be only mental health. I'm not going to talk about spiritual stuff because it's too divisive. People have different beliefs. But I just reached a point where it's like, I can't not talk about
Right.
this because it's so integral to mental health and such
Yes.
a deep part of my story and why my beliefs have changed. And some of my mental health issues were exacerbated by, if not caused by, the religious beliefs I was raised with. Um, and in my former career, I was a pastor. And so I also regularly counseled people who were wrestling with spiritual issues, or had come from other churches to mine because they had been rejected for being LGBTQ or whatever
Mm,
other reason. They just didn't believe the same beliefs. Um, and yeah, so I just think it's so important. And you mentioned Buddhism, and it's interesting. That's another commonality that both for me and for almost every other guest I've had, we've been drawn to Buddhism. Whatever our other beliefs may be, it's not like we're exclusively Buddhist or fully, always in tune with or raised with that belief. But
mhm,
it's what we've embraced as we've evolved and been on our growth journeys and explored different avenues.
mhm.
It just resonates because it's all about loving kindness toward yourself,
Yes.
toward others, and the world.
Yes, it's, finding coming back to that inherent goodness that is always that's within, and the light and the soul, and it's I find that it's a really wonderful, like, roadmap of social psychology to really understand yourself and your emotions and your thoughts, and the more that I've had a practice for many years now, and the more that I practice, the more I understand myself, and then I can communicate better without expectations. And it really has enhanced my relationships and my understanding of who I am in the world. And there is I and what I think other religions what religion in itself misses is the mystical side. The
Yes.
mystical divine feminine side has been pushed away, and so we've all fed into, the patriarchal religiosity. And so when we combine, and what Buddhism does, it combines both, divine masculine and divine feminine. And so that's really where I think, that's where I'm hanging out these days, is just trying to understand all of that. I'm actually doing an insight timer. There's the Tao every day. So I do 6 minutes of listening to the Tao by Lao Tzu every day. And the wisdom is just, it's so simple, but yet so complicated. And so it's been fun to listen to it and learn, and see
Yes.
how it shows up in my life.
I read a book by Dr. Rick Hansen, who is a
Oh,
Buddhist
yes.
psychologist.
Hmm.
His Hardwiring Happiness book was incredibly helpful to me. As are he does free every Wednesday night um, gatherings online,
Nice.
and they're very spiritual. They start with the meditation, and then he or a guest does some sort of presentation about spiritual issues. And then those who wish to stay after for more interactive conversations about what was presented. And
Hmm.
um, I'm not always able to attend, but I just think it's so valuable that he offers that service.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad in general that more and more people are blending Eastern and Western
Hmm.
insights and practices, and the mental health world is becoming less about, go see a doctor and get a prescription. Although
Hmm.
that, no, I'm not dissing medication, I take it, and I think it's important. But there's also the recognition that, talk therapy in and of itself and cognitive awareness at the conscious level, as helpful as it is, there's also, stored in our bodies, the somatic healing, the energy healing that's equally important. And there's our unconscious, things that we don't even realize we've internalized from society and that get reinforced every day that counter our higher wisdom.
Yes. yes, it's so true. Yeah, it just like knocks off our inner compass like on the daily. The minute we're barraged from the moment we open our phones, right? So it's I love what you were just saying about all of that. I've been through on this journey of mental health for really 9 years since my son was 14. He's now 23, and I really, my mind has completely changed about mental illness and what is available to us. What's, what's again, it's given to us in a certain framework, very limited framework, and there's just the problem is that with so I had this analogy really helped me understand it. So like if you're going to go to a restaurant and you look at the website and you decide like, oh, I don't know if I want to go to this. I don't know if I want to go here. If you look at the menu looks good, but is it really good? So then you, let's see if I could, and then, but then you would ask your friend. You would ask your friend like, hey, was this restaurant good? Did you enjoy it? Was it good food, good service, all that stuff? So based on the friendship conversations, then you would go to the restaurant. So the thing with mental health and mental illness is that the doctors don't have they're like the website, okay, but they haven't they're telling you they've got good stuff, but unless you talk to somebody who has gone to them or has been through the same kind of mental illness challenges, try different meds, try different diets, try different practices, unless you talk to them firsthand, you won't know, because the doctors, the psychiatrists, they have like, okay, go to the DSM. What's under the DSM? These drugs. Oh, this, and this. All right, we'll just throw a bunch of shit up against the wall, excuse me, and see what sticks. And they don't look at the whole person. They don't look at the mind, body, and spirit of the person. Okay, what is your metabolic makeup? What is what is your diet like? Have you had something, traumatic happen to you recently? Have you what's your family situation like? They may ask all these questions, but I can tell you when my son had his break, he had a psychotic break at the age of 14, and we went to the hospital and we told them that was hearing voices and he was having hallucinations, auditory and visual hallucinations. You know what they said? Well, if you don't say that you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, you have to go home. So we went home. They sent us home with melatonin. Yeah, that's not going to do it. So we had to go back and say, no, he's going to hurt himself, even though he wasn't. And so they make it violent when it's not. And so that was the only way we could get care. And if I knew then what I know now, I would go about it quite differently.
Yeah,
But that's just one aspect.
I've had to fire more than one mental health provider, actually. Although I will say I have the most fantastic one now who does fully get it. And a lot of mental health professionals have had their own mental health journeys, and
Hmm.
that's why they went into the field. And so there are some excellent ones, but as you said, there are some horrible ones. And the worst ones, in my experience, have been in psych hospitals. I
Yeah.
actually voluntarily admitted myself for depression, and it was the worst thing I've ever done for my mental health. I will never
Mm-hmm.
do that again. I literally could have just hired a babysitter to be with me to make sure that I didn't act on my suicidal ideations. And that's all I needed, really. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
therapy and a whole host of other medication, all that other stuff, but I did not need to be an inpatient. And when I was, it was such a traumatic experience.
Yes.
And the male psychologist, when I was admitted, talked to me for less than 15 minutes, put me on a new medication that he said, quote, always works for middle-aged women.
Wow.
And it was just
Yeah.
unbelievable. And when I told them it wasn't working for me, I could tell this was not what I needed. And I was going to, discharge myself because I had voluntarily admitted myself.
Yeah.
They threatened me and said, if you do that, your insurance won't pay a penny, number one. And number two, we can go to court and argue that you're still a danger to yourself, and your voluntary admission can become an involuntarily one for 30 days if we convince a judge.
Yeah.
So it was
Wow.
horrible.
Wow. Yeah,
Um,
I've heard countless stories like that, Wendy, and I'm so sorry you went through that. That's just horrific. And oftentimes it is the case that people come out worse than
worse, yes.
when they, yeah. And oftentimes, and people don't know this, that oftentimes when the medications are prescribed, they create symptoms rather than take them away.
Yeah,
So
the side effects are unbelievable, and the other problem is the subjectivity. The medication that works
yes,
wonders for one person does absolutely nothing for another one or makes things worse.
exactly.
And also, the therapist that is perfect for one person, different people have different personalities, different needs, different whatever.
Yes.
So there's no one size fits all, and the DSM is so subjective, and there are so many
Yes.
overlapping symptoms that I saw 2 different psychiatrists within a month because my insurance changed and got 2
Mhm.
completely different diagnoses.
Mhm.
And then the one
Oh,
that was ultimately the correct one when I finally found the wonderful provider I have now was one that never in my life had anyone else suggested. Um, and it was just, and she, met with me for 90 minutes and was extremely thorough and was more than just let's try this med. It was just
yeah.
really in depth. And our, now we only meet once every 3 months to like review the meds, but she does more than just the usual psychiatrist. Okay, how are your meds working? Here's a new prescription. Bye. It's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
actual like therapeutic conversation for half an
Yeah.
hour. And that's what needs to happen is all the
Yeah.
integration of all these approaches. I know another counselor who has sessions in a local park. She actually walks with clients and they
Yeah.
talk, and
Yeah. That's
it's a
amazing. The best therapy that my son ever had was with the social worker, not the therapist, the social worker that came to the house that took walks with him. They went skateboarding, like or played frisbee. Those were the best
mhm.
therapists that he ever had. So, it's really it's the whole model because it's capitalism. It's the whole model. The psychiatrist's hands are, tied, and maybe at some point they went into psychiatry thinking that, I'm going to help people, but really what it ends up coming down to is just being drug pushers. So it's, and I know this is such a blanket statement, but and I know I've definitely had my angels of, doctors and support team. My son is very lucky right now and stable and in his version of recovery. And that's the other thing is that we don't talk about recovery. Like there is for certain mental illnesses, there is recovery available. It's not a life sentence. And people don't talk about that. I mean, I don't know if you know Sarah Fay.
Yes, I'm
She's,
very familiar
of
with her. I've
course, right?
read
Yeah.
Pathological.
Pathological.
um
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and absolutely, there's so many ways. And then the whole spiritual piece too, like some spiritual
Mhm.
communities shame people who are struggling mentally and tell them that, they don't have enough faith. I literally, one of the therapists I
Wow.
fired because
Wow.
during a session, she prayed with me for God to forgive my sin of doubting and not trusting God to provide.
Wow, wow. Wow. That's shocking and not
Yeah.
at the same time, but that I feel very angry for you with that.
But,
That's really
I mean, that's what's made me so passionate, that and
yeah.
being a pastor and you just hearing so many horror stories and experiencing some of my own,
Yeah.
um, that, any kind of guru, coach, therapist who claims to have all the answers and have
Mhm.
one approach that works for absolutely everyone, run the other way because
Totally.
no one thing or spiritual practice or anything else is right for every human being.
Exactly, exactly, and that's yeah, I've definitely witnessed, a woman that I follow on YouTube who's recovered from schizoaffective disorder, and she's been so transparent about it. Her name is Lauren Kennedy, so if anybody, who's listening or watching, suffers from schizoaffective disorder, they can, go check out Lauren, and so what she's done is she's combined a metabolic keto diet with getting consistent blood work, with having the right supports people, from a naturopath to a psychiatrist to doing acupuncture, doing all the things to make. Yeah, and she is doing amazing. Like she's recovered. She's not on really like any medications anymore. So, and she's been so transparent because it wasn't like just like, okay, I'm going to do this keto diet. I'm going to be fine. She had a lot of supervision. So definitely not to do it without supervision. But
Right.
yeah.
And it's a
Yeah.
combination, like you mentioned journaling earlier. One of the 6 weeks in my group is spiritual practices, and we actually
Hmm.
do spiritual journaling during the session, and I read examples from my journal and give of a couple different ways of spiritual journaling. One is basically what Elizabeth Gilbert does with her Letters from Love Substack, which is like basically ask whatever your conception of the divine is, what do you want me to know today? Or a more
Hmm.
specific question, but that's my general one. And it's amazing to me, like what flows out. That is, I'm basically just transcribing that wisdom from the divine, and it's completely different than what I write normally.
Hmm.
And it's just amazing. And then the other one is just simple written prayers for me. Like that form of prayer works because it keeps my mind focused. I have
Yeah.
ADHD, and so other forms of like silent meditation for a long period of time, or um, contemplative prayer, are helpful to a point, but I always reach a point where my mind is completely gone somewhere else and I'm not present
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So before you do that type of journaling, do you do any form of meditation and then you let the words flow, or yeah, how do you lead up? Do you have a
Well,
lead
I
in
do.
for that, or?
I have two different journaling practices. Every morning, I start by like before I even get out of bed. First thing is just my venting, kind of like Julie Cameron's artist pages, right?
Artist way? Yeah.
Um, so I do that in the morning, and then after I do that journaling, which is sometimes includes the spiritual kind, like I talked about, but other days it's just venting whatever I need to and seeing what comes out. Then I
Mm-hmm.
do tapping,
Oh
also
yeah.
called EFT. Are
Mm-hmm.
you familiar with it?
I am. Yes.
Okay. Um, and so that helps as well. And then in the evening, when I go to bed at night, I write 5 things that I accomplished that day, and they can be very small things, like when I was super depressed, it was like I got out of bed and got dressed, I took a shower, whatever. But now it's, I went for a walk in the park. It doesn't have to be like a work-related accomplishment,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I did the dishes, and that helps me because I tend to, at the end of the day, beat myself up because I had this list of things I planned to do that day that didn't all get done because some things took longer than others, or I wasn't in the right headspace or whatever. And so consciously thinking of 5 things, however small,
Mm-hmm.
a load of laundry, dishes, that helps. But then I write 5 things I'm grateful for every
Mm-hmm.
day. And the first one is always my husband, but beyond that, I try to make them different every day and very
Nice.
specific. Like, I saw this great blue heron at the park. I ate this wonderful piece of chocolate cake,
Yes.
whatever.
I love
And but
that.
and then the final piece at night is the rest of the page is writing affirmations that I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely believe about myself,
Mm-hmm.
not the kind of like what I call toxic positivity. Um, if you believe it, you can achieve it, you can do anything. Um, I think mindset work is super important, but I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes it gets taken to an extreme, like the law of attraction, like absolutely whatever you think about will happen, good or bad. And so it can
Mm-hmm.
lead to, blaming yourself when bad things happen, or being devastated when the good things you're trying to manifest don't happen. But anyway, so I write things like that I genuinely believe and like about myself, like I am honest. I am creative, I am resourceful, things like that. And that has helped enormously to
Mm-hmm.
end the night on a positive note of reaffirming what I like about myself versus what I didn't get done and I'm beating, or something I said that I'm beating myself up for, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera.
That's so nice. Yeah, I love that, those practices. Mine are a little bit similar. Like in the morning before I wake up, before I get out of bed, I say, there's a Jewish prayer called Modeh Ani, and it says, "Thank you, God, for giving my soul back to me, because the soul, goes away while we're sleeping. And I also like to so I lay in bed and I say the Moda Ani prayer, and then I thank God for letting me have another day. I get excited about having a new day and the sunshine. I really do get charged up with the freshness of a new day. And then I lay in bed and try to remember my dreams, because I love, I try to be a Jungian analyst with myself, and I write down my dreams and I try to understand it. And they're always so weird. My husband's like, "Oh gosh, how long is this one going to be?" And so, and so, so I do that. And then when I and then I do my whole meditation routine, sitting with my altar and my cards and stuff like that, and I listen to the Tao Te Ching for 5 minutes. And then at night, I've been listening to a Archangel Michael meditation. It seems to be the only one that helps me separate from the day, because otherwise I would be like going through the day of like, oh, what didn't I do? And replaying the conversations in my mind, and what could I have said differently? And so there's a part in the guided meditation where the speaker, his name is Kyle Gray, he says, okay, now is the time to go through all your day activities and just review them and let them go. And then he goes in, and then we go into the sleep state. And there's something about, it's only like a 10-minute meditation, but I always fall asleep so well listening to it. And then I have the best sleep usually, unless I'm woken up with the lovely hot flashes of being
Oh,
in my
yes.
50s. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
when I was younger, I naively thought that they were just like during the year or 2 that you were, going through menopause actively, but no,
yeah.
they last a lot longer than that for most of us, or
y- Yeah. 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 I'm having one right now. So
yeah.
it's really fun.
But,
Um,
I'm curious, we talked a little bit about how our, spiritual beliefs have changed, and most of all our authenticity and willing to be who we are, what regardless of what
mm,
others think of our choices. So, if you could go back and tell your younger self that was still trying to please others and conform anything, what would you say to her?
just keep following your heart and meditate so you can hear your heart speak and guide you. Like, get quiet so you can hear. That's what I would
Mm.
tell her. Get quiet so you can hear what the truth is, instead of listening to everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would say 2 things. Number 1, it's okay to make mistakes,
Hmm.
because I was always the high achiever, and that was how I got, the external validation, praise, the
Beautiful.
approval,
Yes.
and that was my whole self-worth came from my achievements. And
Yeah.
I didn't fully realize that until my former career ended, and it was like suddenly I had no identity, no purpose, and thought I was worthless and useless,
Hmm.
basically. And so that would be the number 1 thing. It's okay to make mistakes, and your worth comes from who you are, not what you do.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. I'll take that too. I'll adopt that. Yeah, it's true. I definitely identified in younger years of what I did, being a mother and being a worker, being a wife. That was, and I felt very frustrated, like waiting for, like, what about, like, how am I going to figure out who I am instead of
Mhm.
being all these things? So, yeah. And now that's what's the best part about getting older, I think, is being who you
Absolutely.
are.
Yes. And
So,
feeling freer to, like, explore new ways of expressing who you are, and
mhm.
just even discovering that the ways that we are not the same people that we were, or that we thought we had to be or pretended to be, um, and that it's okay that the things we used to believe and consider absolute truth, we don't believe
Yes.
anymore, you know?
Yes. Yes, it's so true. And I have to say, moving really helps to ignite that.
I
So,
agree.
like, yeah, it really like we moved 4 years ago, and I feel like it really helped me become like more comfortable with who I am, because if I was this person where we used to live, I think I would have felt like um I would have it would have taken longer, maybe, or maybe I would have felt more self-conscious about it, or heard whispers that weren't really there of like, what, who does she think she is, kind
Yeah.
of a thing. So, yeah, it's much a move definitely helps ignite that.
Yeah, my husband and I moved recently as well, and I agree. Starting over in a new place, kind of adds to the sense of this is a fresh start, and
Yeah.
I get to be who I am. And from the beginning, people will know this version of me and either accept it or not, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I still am finding my friends here, it's definitely taking some time to find community. I miss the community that I used to have, but I'm spending I'm getting to meet all these wonderful people like you online.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
my
the
phone.
the online thing has been wonderful for me. Zoom. A lot of people talk about how it's not the same as being in person. But for me, in many ways, it is because we're
Mhm.
still face to face. We're interacting back and forth.
Yes.
Yes, we can't, hug each other, or that aspect is missing, but all of the rest is present. And especially for those of us who don't have very many or any when we first move, in person local connections that we feel safe being fully vulnerable with, having safe online spaces is so important.
Yeah, yeah, it's so great. Well, I'm so glad to meet you and thank you so much for inviting me and I hope to keep in touch and I feel like maybe at some point we should do like a co-post together about spiritual practices. It'd be really great.
Yes, it definitely would be. I'm open to all kinds of collaborations, and I'm so glad we had this conversation. And thanks again for being here. And both of us will be get a recording and that we can post on our websites. And so for those of you who are watching this replay later, as well as those watching us now, thank you for your interest in our work. And we hope that you fully embrace who you are too and have safe people to do that with.
Yes, maybe so. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye,
take care.
everyone.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.